All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, we've been following this Jimmy Butler narrative for the last few months, and it's becoming clearer and clearer to me that eventually he will start to bring his hijinks into the Philadelphia 76er locker room in some way, shape, or form. Because beyond a shadow of a doubt, he is an agent of chaos. And most agents of chaos, they're just bombs that lie dormant. That's all they are. They sit there inert, and they try to act as if they're so harmless. Oh, I've always ran into these problems wherever I've gone because things just haven't gone my way for whatever reason. And then eventually they show you who they really are. And that's going to be Mr. Jimmy Butler, I believe, in the Philadelphia 76er locker room. Everything is peaches and cream right now between himself and Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. For now. But eventually there will be a contention because Jimmy Butler just cannot help himself. So he recently gave an interview in which he gave his perspective on what occurred in that very, very famous practice scrimmage when he showed up for the Minnesota Timberwolves practice to, of course, go through drills with his teammates, so on and so forth. And he also is going to give his take on his little beef with the star power forward of the Detroit Pistons, Blake Griffin. So, of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
Jimmy Butler opened up to the Ringer's JJ Redick's podcast about the infamous Timberwolves practice, revealing that the issues arose when someone told him he had to participate. Butler. That
someone is obviously the coach of the Minnesota Timberwolves, Tom Thibodeau. Who else would it be?
Butler said, quote, "You're going to practice. Now, first of all, I have a real problem with authority." I was like, first of all.
In other words, when he says, first of all, I have a real problem with authority, what he's really saying is that I'm an agent of chaos. That's all that translates to. Because there's always going to be authority figures everywhere we go, because authority signifies what? It signifies order. So if you're against authority, then you're pro-chaos. And sometimes it's good to be pro-chaos. Sometimes you have to create chaos when you're in an environment of inordinate order or inordinate authority. But in the case of being a player on the Minnesota Timberwolves and all they tell you is that you have to practice with your team, and for him to react like that and to bring forth that notion in response to somebody telling him to practice with his teammates, that tells me that he's somebody who's willfully chaotic. He always looks for chaos when he can find it or whenever he can generate it. And he's going to do the same thing with the Philadelphia 76ers.
First of all, you're not going to tell me what I'm going to do. If I choose to practice, I'll choose to practice. And I'm like, nah, I don't just yet. And then.
See, this is what happens when a lot of these guys just start to feel themselves a little bit too much. When they know that their contracts are guaranteed, so on and so forth. So right now, I think that the balance is a little bit too much in favor of some of the players. I think that the owners are going to have to figure out a way to recalibrate things so that you don't have guys putting forth this type of energy. Because there's no way that you could tell me as a so-called star player that what you're doing is beneficial for your teammates to take a stance like this. At the end of the day, if you were not going to practice, then you know what, just don't show up for practice at all and be like, I'm just going to stay home until you guys trade me. But for you to put out this type of energy, that tells me that you're not cognizant of how you're going to be perceived by your teammates or by your organization, and therefore you're not a good teammate.
And then he was like, no, you're going to practice. This person goes, no, you're going to play with the starters. There you go. You did. You got me now. Now I'm not. I'm going to play with the third stringers. Now what?
To be quite honest with you, this little blurb here reads like one of these argumentative chicks trying to go back and forth with her man.
Stephen A., what do you make of the comments?
I don't like them. I don't like them one bit.
To me, it's not so much about like or dislike. To me, it's just Jimmy Butler exposing himself.
You know, I have a simple philosophy.
Talk shit and I know what you're talking about. I know.
Do your job. Now, anything you do beyond your job, if you're striving to be the best, you should always aspire to do more.
Anybody who wants to be great is going to have to go above and beyond. And if you want to be the greatest, you're going to have to go far above and beyond. And on top of that, be delusional.
You do.
Constructively delusional.
Do want to be appreciated for what you do, particularly when you step beyond the scope of your job description. If I I'm not obligated to do this and I step out, appreciate that, damn it, because I don't have to do this. And if you're not going to appreciate it, then leave me alone and let me do exactly what my job description is. But my job description is my job description. My job obligations are my job obligations. And I have to fulfill that. Practicing comes with the job. Performing comes with the job. Listening to authority comes with the job, because you're not the head coach, and you're not the general manager, and you're not the president, and you're not the owner. You're the player. And so you have an obligation to do your job. The reason why I don't like this, and I'm assuming that these quotes are accurate, the reason why I don't like this from Jimmy Butler, you're in a contract here.
Once again, Stephen A. Smith, he's an agent of chaos. So he's going to bring chaos into his own life. All right, the brother he does not think in a three-dimensional fashion. He just doesn't. He doesn't grasp that he has to keep things buttoned up. But that's what happens when you become infatuated with quote-unquote keeping it real. Remember back in the day, Dave Chappelle had those skits on his show when keeping it real goes wrong? Sometimes you could spend so much time being worried about how real you are that you end up really fucking up your own future. Steven Jackson is on record as saying that he's the Tupac of the NBA. In other words, you're somebody who got caught up in a cult of personality for yourself. You're somebody who is overly caught up with your image as opposed to what you need to be thinking about to maximize your earning potential. At the end of the day, those were very destructive comments that Jimmy Butler stated about himself and his views. To say that you're against authority. So in other words, if you're a top coach in the NBA, you don't want Jimmy Butler on your squad. Because he's not going to be a difference maker in regards to you winning a championship. He's not an alpha. He's not going to lead your team anywhere. Really, Jimmy Butler has to be your third best player in order for you to make a title run, to seriously consider being a title contender. And if he's going to come into the locker room with that attitude, why do you need him for? You can get a Klay Thompson who's going to give you the same things, better shooting, and who understands how to follow authority. Why is that? Because Klay Thompson grew up with a strong father figure in his life. Jimmy Butler did not.
You're looking for a 5-year max. What are you doing? That's like you're telling folks, look, man, I'm going to do what I want to do. Well, you want to do it now because you're a rough rider and you hardcore and you're going to go after it. We don't know how you're going to feel 2 years from now, 3 years from now. What level of trust do you garner that you'd be willing to listen when you allow quotes like that to disseminate? And that is the kind of thing that will get in the way, I fear. I hope not, because I like Jimmy a lot. I hope not, but I fear, Max, those are the kind of things that will get in the way of a team saying, I'm going to trust you enough to give you money. The last thing...
No, there's going to be a team that gives him money. Philadelphia will be that team if, say, they get to the semifinals and have a better showing. Let's say they go 7 games with the Boston Celtics. They'll sign him back. Or definitely if they get to the conference finals, which I doubt. But should they get to the conference finals, he'll definitely get, all the money that he wants. But other teams across the NBA, there's always going to be a sucker out there. We know that already. Especially, say, the Clippers, if they don't get Kawhi or KD or something like that, they'll try to throw the Brinks truck at Jimmy Butler. But at the end of the day, his statements are just not wise.
The thing is, it's so important to say this to all of these guys. The true superstars in the league, the Jordans, the Kobes, and everybody else in between, all of those guys, the true superstars in this league, people keep thinking about their abilities. The number one commodity they have is trust.
Absolutely. You know exactly what you're going to get from those 3 players from an effort perspective, night in, night out. You might not get the productivity every night, but you're going to get the effort.
You trust them because you know, come hell or high water, rain, sleet, or snow, it don't matter what the situation is, they are coming to bring it. That's what superstars and stars are supposed to have. Everybody really, but especially those guys. Trust.
Let's talk about superstars. Jimmy Butler does not have superstar talent. You can't tell him that.
Absolutely. That's why he is what he is in the NBA, because he's delusional.
And that's why he's a star. His reach exceeds his grasp. Why does he have a problem with authority?
Of course his reach exceeds his grasp, Max Kellerman. The man has arms like a T-Rex.
I see this very differently than you.
Okay.
I've been going at Jimmy Butler kind of hard, it would seem like, from the outside. I'm just telling you the truth, how I feel about it. And I don't think he's the best player in a championship team.
He's not.
And I would be hesitant to give him a Supermax contract.
So would I.
That's the fact of the matter. Jimmy, I hope you get your money.
You'll get his money. Just ain't gonna get Supermax.
But let's talk about
You don't know that, Stephen A. Smith. He might get the Supermax.
Out. Jimmy Butler, an authority. He doesn't like authority. Let's think about what that means. What has authority told Jimmy Butler from an early age, since his mom kicked him out of the house, right?
That's the real problem. That's the real problem right there. When he says he does not respect authority, he's going back to his mother and the father that he probably never knew.
Right? When he was basically homeless at 13. What has authority told Butler, and what has Butler had to tell authority? Authority told him, leave, you're no good, you're worthless. Authority told him later on, maybe you're an NBA player. Then authority told him, okay, you can get a few minutes in a game. Then authority told him, you're just a defensive stopper. And every step along the way, he said, that's not the way I see myself. His self-image has kept his contempt for that authority, has turned him into a multimillionaire, an international, and certainly a national, if not international celebrity, and an all-star NBA player. That's what it's done.
I concur, sir. Very good breakdown.
Who averages, well, you're a defensive stopper, now he's averaging better than 20 points a game. So his contempt for authority will scare off certain teams. Coaches, certain people don't know how to handle that. I think about someone like Phil Jackson, how he can handle guys like Michael Jordan with that ego, or Dennis Rodman, who's nuts, certifiably insane.
Do you think that it's particularly responsible to call someone certifiably insane on national television, Max Kellerman, especially since Dennis Rodman is not in any type of mental facility or, psychiatric health facility?
Phil Jackson could harness that into a winner.
I agree with you, but I agree from a different perspective. It's very clear to me that Dennis Rodman is a Monarch athlete, but that's a whole other video for another day. I mean, that's very clear that he's a Monarch athlete, and even basic people have figured out that he's a CIA asset. I mean, who the hell else is allowed to take multiple trips to North Korea? I mean, give me a break.
I think of Angelo Dundee. Think Muhammad Ali wanted to be told what to do? When Dundee wanted to, this was in the documentary, when Dundee wanted to throw a left hook, Angelo told me this story before he passed. He would look at Ali and say, after a round of sparring, ooh, I love the way you threw that hook. Ali didn't throw a hook. Then Ali would feel good, he'd throw a hook in the next round.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What Angelo would say actually is, I love how you threw that crisp left hook, how you got your hip into it. That was his way of trying to instruct Ali on how to properly throw punches, how Angelo Dundee wanted him to throw them. He wouldn't just say, I love how you threw the hook. He would say, he would demonstrate it, and he would expound on it. I love how you threw that snapping jab, and, you got your hip into it. You stepped into it, and you stepped back out real quick. That's what Dundee would say, because he knew that Ali did not like to follow direct orders. But see, at least Ali was in a sport where it was just you. It wasn't a team sport. So that's a different dynamic.
Round. I think about Joe Torre managing up, talking to George Steinbrenner after they dropped 2 to Atlanta in the World Series and they were going on the road. He said, after they dropped the first one, Torre said, now we'll probably lose tonight too, but then we're going to sweep them after that. You have to know how to handle, the job of a coach, of a head coach, is to know how to handle big egos.
Absolutely, and I like how you put that, Max Kellerman, because the job of a great coach is to be a handler. That is their job. Now, some coaches are trained handlers. Others are just handlers naturally. But you have to know how to handle your assets.
How to harness what they got in the direction of a winner. A good head coach will harness that attitude in Jimmy Butler. A bad one won't. Period.
That's not the point. Well, go ahead, Molly. I'm here to
I was just going to get to actually some more quotes he had on Blake Griffin, but if you want to respond to
I want to respond to that. Max, that's not the point. The problem here is not how he feels. The problem here is not how he's gotten to be who he is. The problem is his willingness to publicly disseminate it. You can feel whatever way.
Right, but Stephen A. Smith, we also have to understand something. And I agree with you, brother. I agree with you. But we have to understand something. We're living in the woke era. In the woke era, these athletes believe that they could say whatever they want, whenever they want, to whoever they want. And they're really feeling themselves right now in regards to their freedom to express themselves. And, sometimes you have to let people do that so that they can learn the hard way. Because to me, once again, this woke era is creating a lot of confusion. It's obfuscating a lot of the real data, because it's mixing information with misinformation, with disinformation, with sentiment, with emotion. So you have to be able to figure out what's real and what's not. And in the process of that process, many of these woke athletes, they are going to step on, they are going to step into it. They're going to make fools of themselves, and they have to figure it out on their own.
Way you want to feel. But when you get paid 19 and you turn down 110 million and you turned it down for the purpose of getting 190 million, guess what? You got your hand out for somebody else's money. You actually think that any of us, you really think that any of us particularly likes authority? Who wouldn't want to be able to do what they want to do when they want to do it?
Well, Stephen A. Smith, you don't. You love authority. You don't want to be able to do whatever you want to do because, brother, you're probably the most famous sportscaster in America right now, and you're beholden to ESPN. You refuse to start your own platform because you like authority. So for you to say that we all don't like authority, that's not true. You love authority because if you really wanted to, you could start your own radio station. You can come on YouTube or on Facebook and you could broadcast and you can get even more followers and probably make even more money. But you refuse to do so because you're scared to walk off of that quote unquote proverbial plantation known as ESPN. And I call it a plantation in quotes because it's not a literal plantation, of course. But he's been so institutionalized and so fearful to not get the exposure that he gets on ESPN. See that, and that's how you know that Stephen A. Smith, he's beholden to them because he probably could make more money creating his own platform, but he's addicted to the cameras. He's addicted to the fame. And that's what's stopping him from being able to go out and do bigger and better things. But that's a him issue. But his overall assertion that, we all don't like authority, that's not true. Some people love authority. Some people love inordinate authority. They love to be yelled at and emasculated on the daily.
How they want to do it, whenever they choose, and be able to operate with impunity. All of us would love that, but guess what?
That's not true. That is not true, sir. Only people with ruling class mentalities would love the idea of being able to operate with impunity because they know, number one, they're going to be responsible enough to create their own bounds, their own boundaries for conduct. So they don't need somebody to tell them you're right or you're wrong or that's right or that's wrong. They can police themselves. A lot of people cannot police themselves, so they need authority. They need to be led. A lot of people are sheep.
What? We know better. And so because of that, you have to dance from the perspective of recognizing the fact that you don't get to just disseminate. I understand exactly where he's coming from. Being a young black man, growing up in the United States of America, the challenges that he has had, I know exactly where he's coming from. But the point is, you don't get to that place of elevation to the degree that he's aspiring for by looking in the face of people you got your hand out for and going like this, bump y'all, I do what I want to do. You don't.
Unless he's believing in his own cult of personality that he's trying to create. When he sat down with Rachel Nichols, he looked like somebody, he looked like the kid in the back of the class who was playing a class clown for attention, who was throwing spitballs at the teacher and all that other stuff. And when he got caught, he just started to smile because he's like, wow, I got the attention that I wanted. That whole interview with Rachel Nichols, he spent just smiling and, oh, who, me? You know how I am, Rachel. Like, he was just so excited to get this attention. And you could tell, that's why I state that there's no doubt in my mind that, his ramblings about not accepting authority and these other things, that's a manifestation of some childhood issues with him not having a father and, also his problems with his mother.
You don't publicize something like that. It compromises your ultimate goal.
As a young black man in America, you've spoken very movingly about the things that your mother had done for you at an early age.
Yeah.
She's an your mother's one of the most amazing people I've ever heard of.
Thank you.
And the kind of ego that gives you to go out and succeed, the way she was working 2 and 3 jobs and still had time to teach you to read and things like that. Amazing. Jimmy Butler's mother kicked him out of the house when he's 13 years old. Every step of the way, he was told by people in positions of authority, you're not good enough.
You're right.
We don't value you.
Let's keep it moving.
I'm saying you're right. All I'm saying is he can't publicize that when he's trying to get his money.
Here's the good part. He's no longer there anymore. At least I know he's still on Funny.
That's a general statement he said about authority, Mom.
I agree with you, Steve. It is a general statement, but once again, you have to let this brother fly or crash on his own. Because so many people today, they really cannot learn through being able to understand how things are going to go 5 or 6 steps down the line. They have to learn from experience, either good experience or bad experience, because the vast majority of males in this society are 2-dimensional thinkers. They're not 3-dimensional thinkers. So he has to get hit in the face with reality.
I
He's
once
no longer
asked.
with Minnesota.
And to be quite frank with you, I think that he's in a position where he's going to be able to get his money anywhere.
But practice.
I
He's
once
talking about
asked
practice in Minnesota.
Mike Tyson about Teddy Atlas as a trainer, and Mike told me I'd liken him to Bobby Knight. He's not for everyone. And I would say Jimmy Butler as a player, he's not for everyone.
All right.
But there are certain places where he would fit very well. You just got to know how to harness that.
I agree.
He also had some strong words I want to get into about Blake Griffin. So Butler talked about going head-to-head with Griffin during one of Philly's recent wins against the Pistons, saying, Butler, quote, "Lock that up. Blake can't score on me. I don't care what you say. You heard that, Blake. Nobody's worried about you." Max, what do you make of Jimmy Butler calling out Blake Griffin?
Well, Blake Griffin is a player who many other players have tried to call out across the NBA in the last 8 or 9 years for whatever reason. Part of it's because of the early acclaim that he received as being the dunk master. I think part of it also is the perception that he's soft for whatever reason. Most likely, let's keep it real, because he's so light-skinned. A lot of guys try to call him out, try to test his manhood, so on and so forth. Unfortunately for Blake, one of the reasons why it persists is because he did not nip it in the bud early. See, Blake needed to get into a big brawl in his first season or two in the league to let people understand. But once you let that carry over into 8 or 9 seasons, now, the overall understanding now is that he's a quote-unquote punk. And that's unfortunate, because maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But because he didn't nip it in the bud early, it persists. And he gets publicly disrespected.
I don't mind it from Jimmy Butler's point of view. I do think there's an issue with Blake Griffin. Blake Griffin has such eye-popping talent that we all expected him to be a superstar. When it turned out he was just an all-star, we kind of held it against him. But I think there's been an overcorrection in the public consciousness about Blake, as though he's not good. Blake Griffin's having a very good year. He is an all-star player.
25-9.
That's right. He's going
to be an all-star. Blake has freakish natural talent. The thing also with Blake, though, is that he's dirty. He does a lot of passive-aggressive shit on the floor, trying to trip players, submarine players. So I think also that in and of itself, his little chippiness, that's his way of trying to get back at guys around the league, because of the fact that he does not want to get into an all-out brawl.
He's just not a superstar player. He's not an MVP. He's not the best player on a championship team, but he is an all-star player who, a great defensive player like Jimmy Butler, throws down the gauntlet, says, "I'm not worried about you. I got no problem with Butler."
Let me say this also. Even though I'm already on record as saying that the Eastern Conference playoffs are going to be great, especially once we get to the second round, and I stated that it's going to be Toronto, Boston, Philly, and Milwaukee, wouldn't surprise me if it wasn't, if one of those teams got knocked off early, because Indiana and Detroit are going to be problems for some of these teams in the playoffs.
I think Blake has become a little underrated.
I think you missed the boat on what Jimmy Butler's trying to say. Ain't nobody questioning the skills of Blake Griffin. You try to question his heart.
Absolutely, and that's what they've been doing for the last 8 years.
Because when it really, really counts, where was he? A lot of those guys are going to be blemished for years. I mean, in the end, if Chris Paul doesn't win a championship, his epitaph is going to be getting injured last year in Game 5 and also folding as a team against the Houston Rockets in Game 6 for the Western Conference semifinals a few years back, which started the Warriors' ascension, okay? Because that was...
Well, no, actually what started the Warriors' ascension was the fact that they won 67 games that regular season. And they were going to beat the Clippers anyway. I think that they were 3-1 against the Clippers in that regular season. They were going to beat the Clippers. This notion that the Clippers would have knocked off the Warriors is a big joke.
That was the first year the Warriors won the championship. Well, Blake Griffin was on that team too. He was nowhere to be found. Blake Griffin has been injury prone. When he hasn't been injured, he hasn't shown up in big moments. That's been a knock against him. No one's ever questioned his talent. But what Jimmy Butler is saying is, excuse me, you might make a jump shot here or there. You might post me down low and try to score a point here and there. But when it really, really counts, you will be nowhere to be found, because your resume and your history tells us, Blake Griffin, that's what you are.
Well, nothing against Jimmy Butler, but where does he hide his championships?
That's what I took from what Jimmy Butler was saying.
What I took from what Jimmy Butler was saying is that Blake Griffin is soft. I could punk him if I want to. It's pretty much a notion across the NBA that he's soft and you could punk him. That's all.
Yeah, his opinion. All right, keep it moving, guys.
But anyway, that's basically it on that. we'll see how things go for the agent of chaos known as Jimmy Butler over the course of this season. It would not surprise me if he and Joel Embiid or he and Ben Simmons have a falling out at some point in the season. So peace.